So on April 22nd, 1995, you launched your website.
StuartTiros.com.
Do you want to talk a little bit about just what that meant to you, what it felt like, and what it was made up of?
Well, the website itself was made up of all of these pictures that I had found in the basement. It was a grouping of these photos that I had created to be my life. I felt that if I had made a website and had shown pictures of myself, a fat man in a wheelchair with no nose, that I would have as good of luck meeting someone on the internet as I would outside, which was basically a zero. And it became infectious. It became a daily ritual of taking one of these photos and trying to stretch a story out of it. And it covered the whole realm of my life, everything from my family, my father, my sister, her family, to even my grandfather's death.
Is that where you found the confidence to enter chat rooms and begin corresponding with other people?
I was armed with this newfound confidence, something that I was missing since the accident. It robbed me of who I was, of my identity, and this was such an easy replacement, satisfying. And I knew that by the responses I was getting from other people that I was doing the right thing. I wasn't hurting anyone, and I was able to communicate with people again.
So basically you would go into chat rooms as the Stuart Tiros on the website and have conversations, and
I would go into these websites as me.
I see.
The images that I put on this website were me. And I could talk freely with these people and just be myself.
I'm curious, when you were working at Dynatag and installing surveillance cameras, were you involved in the design of new cameras, or just basically installing them?
That was a job that I had as soon as I dropped out of college, and I was basically an installer. But I saw that the managers of the company and what they were doing by creating these new cameras that were advanced, that covered the field of so many more things other than just surveillance, medical or military, the arts, astronomy. And I turned myself into the manager. It was an easy story to tell because I was there and it was me.
So that's why on the website you present yourself as sort of the designer of this technology?
Yes.
Okay. I know that in your real life, your sister ran away in 1975, and on the website, she's actually a younger sister on the website that is now married and has a child.
Christopher.
Your nephew, yeah. Talk about why you made that switch, or that why did you assign her to be still in your life on the website when in reality she's not in your life?
Well, it's hard to explain necessarily why, but I wanted to create a full life from these pictures. A life that people could feel comfortable about and admire. A life that I should have had. And these pictures were beautiful in the way that they told this story. And I would spend days and days laboring over who the people in the picture were and how they associated themselves with me, and it became incredibly exciting, invigorating. I felt more alive than I ever had before.
On the website, your father works for Barnes Engineering, designing communication systems from weather satellites, which is what he does in real life.
Yes.
But on the website, your father stays married to your mother, lives in Plant City. You grow up with your father, and in real life, he went to Colorado Springs. Why did you write that into the website?
Is that really any different than how it could have been or should have been? The stretching of these realities really aren't that far from the truth. I was allowed to tell people these stories from the pictures that they would feel comfortable enough to talk to me, and they did. I received so much email from all of these people who would visit the sites. That's how I met Jill Haddock.
Mr. Tyros, tell me about the pictures.
Well, the pictures were something that I found down in the basement of my house. After the accident, I wanted to be alone for a little while, so I moved into a new house and set up my computer. And one day I was working on it, and all the lights in the house went out, and the computer went out. So I went down in the basement to find the fuse box. I got out of my chair on my hands and knees and went downstairs, and that's where I found this box. And the box was full of these beautiful pictures. Pictures of people that I didn't know, but their whole history was laid out in these photos.
So, how did you get them back upstairs?
Well, when I found the box, I got a little excited, and I wanted to spread them out over a table and look at all of them. And there were so many of them that it took me 2 or 3 trips upstairs and downstairs and up again. And then I had them all laid out at the table, and I could tell this whole family's story. And the more that I looked at them, and the more that I organized them into different categories and stories, I began to realize that it was a lot like my own life.
Do you have any idea who the people in the pictures were?
No. I suspect that they were probably the family that lived in the house before I did. So at first I was just keeping them on the table, and I would look at them every morning and pick them up and just stare at them for the longest time, trying to find little details about them. And then I started putting them up on my wall so I could get a better look at them. I would spend hours with these pictures. Keep in mind that I was alone for so long. I hadn't had any contact with anybody. No one came to visit me or talk to me or call me. I didn't want to talk to anybody. The grocery kid from down the street would show up with my food from the store every week, and after a while he just ended up just leaving them on the porch.
So these pictures were sort of a way to deal with your loneliness?
I know that I felt so good when I would look at them, and talk to them and learn more about them through this pictures. It was so important to me to figure out who they were, and it just made me feel better about myself. I wanted to talk to people so badly, but I couldn't. I couldn't let anybody see me the way that I was. So I would make up stories. And that's when I got the idea for the website. And I started taking them and putting them into the scanner and making files on them. And that's how the whole website got started.
On October 5th, 1990, in the Gainesville Sun, there was an article that featured a story about you. Can you tell me of the first time that you heard about the Gainesville murders?
The first time I think was on the television. It was when the first girl got killed. And then another girl got killed, and then another girl. I remember that Gainesville became scared, and it was as if the whole town didn't know what to do. And there were police everywhere. I remember going to work that morning, and there were police all over the street. I was going to Dynatag, and some police even came into the store to ask some questions. People were really frightened.
So what was your role in the whole murders?
Well, although the newspaper article said that I was a hero, it's not really true. What had happened was that there were these murders happening and bank robberies at the same time, and they thought that maybe the same person was doing them. And then the police found this campsite outside of town. And at this campsite there was a bag of money from the bank that had the identification die on it, and a tape recorder with this man who was singing into it and saying poetry about the murders, and a baseball cap and a coat and a receipt that was in one of the notebooks. And there was a man, Detective Jack Smith, who had found this receipt and had discovered that it was a Circle K receipt. Well, Circle K was the store that I worked at. I was installing surveillance cameras for Circle K and keeping all of the tapes. We kept tapes for a year of all of our clients. And Detective Smith came to me and wanted to see those tapes. And I showed them to him, and in the tapes he saw that all of the women who were killed had been going to Circle K. And he also saw a man who was wearing the baseball hat and the coat. And that's how he found the killer.
And that was Danny Rowling.
Right. The newspaper, I guess, wanted to create this story and sell more papers, so they had a picture of me and the detective, and they called me a hero, although I really wasn't.
How did that make you feel?
Good. Good. My life really changed. I felt bad because I really wasn't a hero. I just showed Detective Smith the tapes, but well, my life changed. I used to go to a bar called the Salty Dog, and even though I had been drinking there for a while, the bartender didn't know my name, and all the regulars who were drinking there would used to laugh and tell jokes, but they would never include me in on it. And then the day that the newspaper article came out, I walked through the door and everyone called out Stewart, and the bartender was buying me beers, and I got a raise at work, and I bought a new Pathfinder, a new car, and things were really good. I felt good about myself.
So, describe the atmosphere in Gainesville after Danny Rolling, the Gainesville killer, was apprehended.
I remember when the murders were happening, it seemed that everybody was holding their breath, that they were afraid to move. And then after Danny Rollins was caught, it seemed like everyone just exhaled, and people were able to breathe again.
Mr. Tiros, could you tell me a little bit about the accident?
Well, it all started with, my mother's birthday. A friend of hers, Mary Stiles, who used to run with her in the carnival when my mother was Aqua Girl in the carnival, wanted to throw a surprise birthday party for her. And she wanted to hold it at Showtown, USA, which is in Gibsonton. It's an old bar that all of the carnival people used to hang out in and drink in, including my mother, and she wanted to get everyone together again for a big party. She wanted me to get my mother there without her suspecting. So we set it up, and I convinced my mother that I was going to take her to a fancy restaurant for her birthday dinner. And as we're driving, the funny thing is that I was coming up with ideas in my head on how to get her to Showtown, and she just started talking about Showtown and all the great times that she used to have there, and she wished that she could see these people again. And as we were driving by, she actually asked me to stop. And it worked out perfectly, because we pulled into the parking lot, and as we're going into the bar, the door swings open, and there's Mary and all of her friends, and they all yell surprise, and my mother was just crying and laughing, and it was beautiful. It was a really great night. And we ended up going back to my mother's house. And in the morning, it had been raining a lot that night because of Hurricane Anna. Hurricane Anna was coming inland and then went back out to sea. And in the morning, the rains had gotten so bad that I woke up to a crash, and the window had broken because a branch from a tree had come through it, and I ran down to see if my mother was okay. And she was watching the TV news, and the weatherman was saying that Anna was coming back inland. So I figured right then that I had to get back to Gainesville, because we had to probably reinstall all of the cameras, the surveillance cameras, after the storm. So I kissed my mother goodbye, and I got in my Pathfinder and took off on North 75 to go up to Gainesville. Now, the weather wasn't so bad when I started, but about an hour into the trip, the rains got a little heavier and the wind became a little stronger, and I had to go to the bathroom, so I thought it would be a good place to pull off. Exit 72 is a favorite truck stop of mine, Benji's. And as I was pulling off the exit, I couldn't see very well because of the heavy rain. And I saw something out of the corner of my eye. It was two figures. And all of a sudden there was this bright flash of light. And I I swerved to miss them, and I pulled the wheel real hard, and all of a sudden I just lost control. And there was this enormous crashing noise, and next thing I knew, all I could hear was just this large whirring of the motor, and I saw someone's arm reach in and turn off the ignition, and I passed out. And I woke up 4 days later in the hospital.
Can you describe your injuries a little bit for me?
And when I woke up, they told me that my vertebrae had been smashed in the accident, being thrown around in the car, and that I'd never walk again. Be confined to a wheelchair. And my face was all bandaged up, and they said that my face had first gone through the windshield and then back again.
So, has it been a tough adjustment being in a wheelchair?
What do you think?
And what's it like living with the prosthesis?
There's not a day that goes by that I put it on and look in the mirror and think about the accident and what would have happened if it wasn't raining, or if I had controlled it a little better, if I hadn't swerved to meet those people, just not to hit those people.
And so your life has changed tremendously through this whole ordeal.
I'm not the same person that I was when I left the house.
So tell me about Jill Haddock.
Jill Haddock was a woman that I met while I was in a chat room, and we started emailing each other, and right away we found things that we had in common, and we began writing to each other pretty regularly. And Jill Haddock is a beautiful, smart, funny woman. She's just a wonderful human being, and she's my girlfriend. The whole process started, and we became closer and closer friends, and I realized that the more and more that we were writing to each other, that I was slowly falling in love with her. And because of this website and because of this identity that I had the courage to bring that up to her, to tell her how I felt, and she said that she felt the same way. She was my first girlfriend.
So tell me about the private room on your website.
We'd been writing to each other on a pretty regular basis, to the point that every time I would wake up in the morning, I would wheel over to the computer, and there would be an email from her. She would always write to me once before she went to work. And one morning she left this strange message for me with a password and told me to go to her site, which I did. I often went there just to look at her, to see pictures of her. But this time I put in the password, and this room popped up, and there were these naked pictures of her. She said that those pictures were just for me and me only. She was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. And I guess I was kind of lucky, because I wanted to give something back in return. I wanted to show her how much I cared for her, and amongst this box of pictures that I had found, there were also these nude photographs of the man. And I scanned those in, and I returned an email back to her with this password Aqua Girl. And that's when the relationship really began and became stronger and heavier.
Are you saying that it became sexual?
Because of the accident, I can't feel anything below my waist. But we would chat back and forth, and it would get pretty steamy sometimes. She told me that it was the best sex that she had ever had.
Well, it sounds like a great relationship. What happened to it?
One morning I went to go get the email that she usually sends to me, and there wasn't any, and I kind of got a little worried because she did it on a pretty regular basis. It was February 12th, 1996, I remember. There was a knock on the door, and at first I just thought it was the grocery kid. And then another knock came, and then another knock came, and it was getting heavier and more urgent, and I got kind of scared. I didn't know who it was, so I put my nose in and wheeled over to the door, and I just opened it up without thinking, and there she was. Jill was standing right there on my porch. I don't know how she got my address. I don't know how that she found me. But she was standing right there, and she asked, "Is Stuart Tiros there?" And I just stared at her. And she asked me again, "Is Stuart Tiros here?" And I told her, "No, there is no Stuart here. I don't know anyone of that name. I've lived on the street for a long time, and I don't know anyone by that name." And I just slammed the door in her face. I just sat there looking at the door for the longest time. Finally, she just went away.